All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into some pretty fascinating territory.
Oh, yeah.
How men approach love and relationships.
Interesting.
And our guide for this journey is going to be Steve Harvey and his book, Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man. Now, he frames it as a playbook for women,
Okay.
but we're going to dig a bit deeper
Right.
and see if his advice actually holds up in the real world.
I love that.
Yeah.
You know, it's so interesting how this book has sparked so much conversation and debate.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It really does tap into that age-old challenge
Yeah,
of understanding the opposite sex.
absolutely.
But I think the key is to look beyond just the surface-level advice
Right.
and consider those underlying assumptions, you know? Are these like universal truths about men?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they shaped by Harvey's own experiences and the culture he's a part of?
That's a great question. And Harvey kicks things off with a pretty bold statement.
Okay.
He says men are driven by three basic things:
All right.
who they are, what they do, and how much they make.
Right off the bat, that raises some questions.
Yeah.
I mean, is it really that simple?
Right.
What about emotions, personal values,
Yeah.
societal pressures? I mean, are those not part of the equation?
Yeah.
I think it's important to acknowledge that men, like anyone, are complex beings.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, reducing their motivations to just the simple formula might overlook a lot of nuance.
For sure. For sure. He even uses this anecdote about the New England Patriots and that whole cheating scandal, where they were caught videotaping their opponents' practices.
Oh, yeah.
And Harvey seems to draw a parallel between that and men's drive to be number one, even if it means bending the rules.
Interesting. So if we consider that analogy, it kind of raises an important question.
Yeah.
If men are so focused on achieving this number one status,
Mm-hmm.
how does that impact their approach to love and commitment?
Right.
Does it create a sort of tunnel vision where relationships become secondary to career goals or financial success?
It makes you wonder.
It's something to ponder, especially if you're looking for a partner who's ready to prioritize a relationship.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so maybe men aren't quite as simple as Harvey initially suggests.
Yeah.
But then he throws another curveball.
Okay.
He says men and women don't actually experience love in the same way.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Right.
He describes women's love as nurturing and all-encompassing,
Okay.
while men express love through what he calls the 3 Ps:
Okay.
profess, provide, and protect. Now, these actions might sound familiar to a lot of people,
Right.
but the question is, do they encompass the full spectrum of love and emotional connection that many women seek?
Let's break down these 3 Ps a bit.
Okay.
Professing love might mean a man introducing you as his girlfriend or publicly acknowledging the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Providing could be about financial stability and taking care of practical needs.
Okay.
And protecting could involve ensuring physical and emotional safety.
Exactly.
And it's important to consider how these 3 Ps manifest in real-life behaviors.
Are they enough to create a truly fulfilling and equitable partnership?
Right.
Or do they reinforce traditional gender roles, where men are primarily seen as providers and protectors, while women are expected to be nurturing caregivers?
Now, Harvey also delves into the whole concept of gold diggers, which, let's be honest, is a term that often gets thrown around without much thought.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
He actually challenges the way that term is often used.
Okay.
He suggests that expecting a man to contribute financially in a relationship isn't necessarily about being a gold digger.
Interesting.
Instead, he frames it as recognizing a core aspect of traditional masculinity,
Sure.
which of course is bound to spark debate about evolving gender roles and expectations.
So we're already seeing that Harvey's perspective can be quite traditional.
Yeah.
But he also dives into communication, especially that dreaded phrase that seems to send chills down a man's spine.
Uh-oh.
We need to talk.
Oh, boy.
He says this phrase triggers a fight-or-flight response in men because they're wired for problem-solving, not emotional processing.
That makes sense.
He even tells this funny story about his co-host who was chatting up a guy at a party. The moment she mentioned having 5 kids,
Oh,
the guy practically ran for the hills.
oh no.
It really highlights those differences in communication styles.
That's a great story. But it does raise a question.
Yeah.
Does Harvey's explanation actually help bridge the communication gap between men and women?
Right.
Or does it simply reinforce stereotypes about men being emotionally unavailable or avoidant?
That's a valid point.
Hmm.
While his perspective might offer some insight into those common communication breakdowns,
Yeah.
it's also important to remember that not everyone fits neatly into these categories.
For sure.
Individual personalities and experiences play a huge role in how we communicate.
Absolutely.
All right, so we've talked about men's motivations, how they express love, and even their communication styles.
Hmm.
But what about when it comes to choosing a partner?
Oh, well,
Harvey uses this interesting fishing analogy.
I like analogies.
Uh-huh.
Right, let's hear it.
He says men are either sport fishing for casual flings or looking for keepers for the long haul.
Okay.
And he actually gets pretty specific about the characteristics that distinguish a sports fish from a keeper.
Interesting.
He suggests that a woman who commands respect has clear standards
Okay.
and invests in her own growth might be seen as a keeper,
Gotcha.
while someone who's overly revealing seeks external validation or doesn't value her own time might be perceived as a sports fish.
Now, this analogy certainly paints a vivid picture,
It does.
but it also begs the question,
Yeah.
does it put undue pressure on women to conform to certain standards to be deemed worthy of commitment?
Right.
Does it oversimplify the complexities of attraction and compatibility?
It also makes you wonder if these categories are really that fixed.
Yeah.
Can a sports fish become a keeper?
Right.
Can a man switch between these modes depending on his own life stage or relationship goals?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Absolutely. And as listeners, it's important to critically evaluate these analogies and frameworks.
Right.
Do they provide genuine insight into relationship dynamics?
Yeah,
Or do they oversimplify a complex reality?
that's the question.
It's up to each of us to determine what resonates with our own experiences and values.
And speaking of potentially controversial viewpoints,
No.
Harvey also wades into the mama's boy dilemma.
Ooh, that's a good one.
He has a rather provocative take on this,
Okay.
suggesting it's actually the woman's responsibility to set boundaries and prevent a man from becoming overly reliant on his mother.
He tells this hilarious anecdote
Oh, I know it.
about a guy baking cookies for his mom's bake sale in the middle of the night, completely neglecting his wife and kids.
It's so good.
It's a funny story, but it highlights how unclear boundaries can create resentment and conflict in a relationship.
Totally. He argues that if a woman doesn't establish clear standards early on, a man will default to his mother's expectations.
That's interesting.
But is it really fair to place the onus solely on women to fix this dynamic?
Right.
What about cultural norms and individual family dynamics?
That's a complex issue with no easy answers.
For sure.
But Harvey's point is that women need to be assertive and communicate their needs clearly.
So how do women actually go about doing that?
Yeah.
Well, Harvey provides a set of 5 crucial questions
Okay.
that he believes every woman should ask a man to gauge his intentions and compatibility.
I like this.
These questions are designed to cut through the games and get to the heart of what a man truly values and desires in a relationship.
Give me the questions.
He encourages women to ask about things like long-term goals,
Okay.
views on family and commitment, his relationship with his mother,
Interesting.
and of course, what he's looking for in a partner.
Okay. But it's not just about the questions themselves.
Right.
It's about paying attention to how a man answers.
Exactly.
Does he offer specifics or does he just give vague, generic responses?
You're right.
Does he hesitate or avoid certain topics altogether?
Yeah.
Those are the real red flags.
It sounds like it's all about reading between the lines and discerning whether his words align with his actions.
Absolutely.
And if there's a mismatch, well, that's a sign to proceed with caution.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of Harvey's most controversial pieces of advice,
I know what's coming.
the infamous 90-day rule.
This one has sparked endless debates.
So many.
Harvey's stance is clear. Withhold physical intimacy for 90 days to truly assess a man's character and intentions.
He compares it to his time working at the Ford Motor Plant,
Right.
where you had to work 90 days before receiving benefits.
Right.
It's like a probationary period to see if he's willing to put in the work and demonstrate his commitment without getting the benefits up front.
But let's be real, is that realistic in today's dating landscape?
It's a good question.
And what about people who are looking for a more organic, natural connection rather than a test period?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if a guy disappears just because you're not sleeping with him right away, isn't that a good thing?
Right.
Doesn't it weed out those who aren't genuinely interested?
Those are all valid points.
Yeah.
And while the 90-day rule might sound rigid, the underlying principle is about prioritizing your own needs and standards.
Right.
It's about establishing boundaries and evaluating compatibility without rushing into a physical relationship.
So it's less about the specific time frame and more about the mindset
Yes.
of valuing yourself and taking the time to truly get to know someone before making a decision about intimacy.
Exactly. And Harvey even suggests focusing on other forms of connection during this period.
Okay.
Quality time, meaningful conversations, shared experiences. He even jokes about offering different payments like hugs, kisses, and compliments to keep a man engaged without rushing into physical intimacy.
It's an interesting approach, but it definitely raises questions about the dynamics of power and control in relationships.
Yeah.
Who gets to set these terms, and
Right.
what does it say about expectations and motivations on both sides?
It's a complex issue that's worth exploring further,
Sure.
but ultimately comes down to what feels right for you
Mm.
and what aligns with your values and relationship goals. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground already,
We have.
from men's motivations and communication styles to their approach to love and commitment. We've delved into some of Harvey's key insights.
And we've also raised some critical questions about the validity of his claims,
Right.
the potential biases,
Yeah.
and the importance of considering individual differences and evolving societal norms.
Absolutely. Welcome back to our deep dive into Steve Harvey's act, Like a Lady Think Like a Man. We've already uncovered some thought-provoking and sometimes controversial ideas about how men approach relationships.
And as we continue, I think it's important to remember that we're not here to endorse or condemn Harvey's views.
Right.
We're here to analyze them, dissect them, and see what valuable nuggets we can extract for ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's pick up where we left off. We were talking about the 90-day rule and the idea of establishing boundaries early on.
Yeah.
Now, Harvey also delves into a topic that's particularly relevant for single mothers:
Okay.
when to introduce a man to your children.
This is where his advice might surprise some people.
Okay.
He actually believes women often wait too long to introduce a potential partner to their kids.
Really? That seems counterintuitive. Most advice out there says to take it slow, protect your kids from getting attached and all that.
Right. But Harvey argues that by keeping a man separate from your home life for an extended period, you're creating this artificial fantasy world.
I see.
You're getting to know a version of him that might not exist in the context of your real-life kids included.
It's like you're presenting a curated, polished version of yourself, and then suddenly, bam, reality hits. Yeah. That could be jarring for everyone involved.
Exactly. He suggests a more gradual approach,
Okay.
integrating a man into your life, bit by bit, starting with casual interactions and observing how he interacts with your kids in different settings.
So instead of a big formal meet the family dinner,
Right.
it's more about those everyday moments,
Yeah.
seeing how he handles stress, how patient he is, even how he reacts to a tantrum in the grocery store.
Those seemingly insignificant interactions can reveal a lot about a person's true character, far more than a few fancy dates ever will.
It's about paying attention to the small details, the subtle cues that show you whether he's genuinely interested in being a part of your life, not just dating you in a vacuum.
Precisely.
Right.
And it allows your kids to gradually adjust to his presence, form their own opinions, and feel like they're part of the process, rather than being surprised with a new father figure out of the blue.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that's unfortunately all too common in relationships:
Oh boy.
infidelity. Harvey doesn't sugarcoat it.
Mm.
He says men simply don't view sex the same way women do. For many men, it can be a purely physical act devoid of emotional entanglement.
He shares a rather startling anecdote about a man who actually asked his wife for permission to sleep with other women,
Oh, wow.
promising that it would be purely physical and wouldn't affect their emotional bond. It really underscores the vast differences in how men and women can perceive intimacy and fidelity.
Wow. Okay, so is he saying that all men are just wired to cheat? Is that it? No hope?
No, not at all. He's not condoning infidelity.
Okay.
He's trying to provide insight into the male psyche to help women understand the potential pitfalls and make informed decisions. He argues that men are often driven by ego validation and a desire for variety, which can lead them down a slippery slope.
He even suggests that some men might cheat because they haven't achieved the level of success they desire
Yeah.
in those three key areas we talked about earlier: identity, work, and income.
It goes back to that idea that men often equate their worth with their accomplishments.
Right.
And when they feel inadequate in those areas, they might seek validation elsewhere,
Right.
even if it means betraying their partner's trust.
But what about the women involved in these affairs? Does Harvey have any thoughts on them?
He suggests that some women who engage in affairs with married men might have low self-esteem or a lack of boundaries, allowing themselves to be exploited. He encourages women to value themselves and set higher standards for the type of men they allow into their lives.
It sounds like he's placing a lot of responsibility on women to protect themselves from infidelity,
Yeah.
both by choosing partners wisely and setting clear boundaries.
You could interpret it that way,
Yeah.
and it's certainly a point that's open to debate. But he also emphasizes that men need to be held accountable for their actions.
So if a man does cheat, what then? Is there any coming back from that?
Harvey doesn't offer a magic bullet,
Right.
but he stresses the importance of establishing clear consequences early on in the relationship.
Okay.
He argues that if a man knows that cheating is an absolute deal breaker, he's more likely to think twice before risking everything.
It's about making it crystal clear what you will and will not tolerate in a relationship.
Mhm.
No gray areas.
Exactly. And if infidelity does occur, the consequences need to be significant. It might mean counseling separation or even ending the relationship. It's about holding him accountable for his actions and demonstrating that betrayal has serious repercussions.
Harvey also acknowledges that sometimes a man needs to lose something precious, like his family, to truly appreciate its value. He shares a story about a friend whose wife left him after discovering his infidelity. The man was devastated and realized he needed to completely reevaluate his priorities.
It's a powerful example of how hitting rock bottom can sometimes be a catalyst for positive change. The man in the story eventually won his wife back by demonstrating genuine remorse, changing his behavior, and proving that his family was now his top priority.
It's a reminder that even in the face of such a profound betrayal, reconciliation and growth are possible, but it takes work from both partners.
Absolutely. It requires open and honest communication, a willingness to forgive, and a commitment to rebuilding trust, which can be a long and challenging process.
It seems like a lot of work, but it also underscores that relationships are a two-way street.
Yeah,
Both partners have to be willing to put in the effort for it to thrive.
exactly. And that brings us to another one of Harvey's central themes.
Okay.
Men respect standards. He's adamant that women need to set clear expectations early on and stick to them.
He talks about his own wife, Marjorie, who laid down the law from the very beginning.
Uh-huh.
She knew what she wanted in a partner, and she wasn't afraid to communicate those standards clearly.
And Harvey rose to the occasion.
He did.
He recognized that if he wanted to be with this amazing woman, he had to step up his game and meet her expectations.
So it's not about being demanding or controlling. It's about having self-respect and knowing your worth.
Precisely. And it's about communicating those standards confidently and consistently. Harvey even offers some practical tips on how to frame those expectations in a way that's assertive but not off-putting.
For example, he suggests focusing on what you don't like instead of giving a man a detailed blueprint of what you do like. So instead of saying, I love it when a man brings me flowers, you might say, I don't appreciate it when a man forgets special occasions.
It's about giving him the space to figure things out on his own,
Yeah.
to show you that he's paying attention and willing to put in the effort to meet your needs.
It's almost like a little test to see if he's truly invested in understanding you and building a strong foundation for the relationship.
And if he fails a test, well, it might be a sign that he's not the right fit for you.
We've covered a lot of ground in this section, from infidelity and the importance of setting standards
Yeah.
to navigating the complexities of introducing a new partner to your children.
And as we move into the final part of our deep dive, we'll continue to unpack Harvey's advice, looking at his views on everything from handling disagreements to recognizing genuine commitment. Stay with us.
All right, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Steve Harvey's act. Like a lady, think like a man.
Oh, it's flown by.
I know, right?
So much to unpack.
It really is.
Yeah.
We've journeyed through some pretty intense terrain so far,
Yeah.
from deciphering men's motivations and love languages to navigating the choppy waters of infidelity and setting standards.
And through it all, we've encouraged you to think critically about Harvey's advice,
Right.
considering the cultural context,
Yeah.
potential biases,
Yeah,
and whether it truly resonates with your own experiences and values.
exactly. It's not about taking everything he says as gospel,
Right.
but rather using it as a springboard for self-reflection and understanding different perspectives.
I love that. So let's dive into the last few nuggets of wisdom from Harvey's playbook.
Okay, sounds good.
One thing he talks about is the importance of handling disagreements constructively.
Now, conflicts are inevitable in any relationship, right?
For sure.
But Harvey argues that men often approach disagreements differently than women.
Interesting.
He suggests that men are more likely to withdraw or avoid confrontation,
Yeah.
whereas women might be more inclined to talk things through and
Yeah.
express their emotions openly.
That's
This
right.
can lead to a lot of frustration and miscommunication.
For sure. So what's the solution? How can couples bridge this gap
Right.
and fight fair, so to speak?
Well, Harvey emphasizes the importance of understanding each other's communication styles
Okay.
and finding a compromise.
Makes sense.
It might mean agreeing to take a break when things get heated, allowing each person space to cool down before trying to resolve the issue.
He also suggests using I statements instead of blaming or accusing the other person.
Oh, that's good.
So instead of saying, you always do this,
Yeah,
try saying, I feel hurt when this happens.
I like that.
It's about owning your own feelings and expressing them in a way that invites understanding rather than defensiveness.
Right. And it's crucial to listen actively, truly trying to understand the other person's perspective, even if you don't agree with it.
Absolutely.
Sometimes simply feeling heard and validated can go a long way in de-escalating a conflict.
It really can.
Yeah.
Now, another topic Harvey addresses is recognizing genuine commitment.
Okay.
How can you tell if a man is truly invested in a long-term relationship?
That's the million-dollar question.
Well, he provides a few key indicators.
Okay, I'm all ears.
One is consistency.
Okay.
Does his actions match his words?
Right.
Is he reliable, trustworthy, and present in the relationship?
Another is effort.
Yeah.
Does he go out of his way to make you feel loved and appreciated? Does he prioritize spending quality time with you and make an effort to integrate you into his life?
He also talks about respect.
Okay.
Does he value your opinions, listen to your concerns,
Hmm.
and treat you with kindness and consideration?
And finally, sacrifice.
Yes.
Is he willing to compromise, to put your needs before his own at times, to make sacrifices for the good of the relationship?
These might seem like pretty basic qualities.
Yeah, they do.
But Harvey argues that they're often overlooked in the whirlwind of early romance.
Yeah, for sure.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement and ignore those red flags or inconsistencies.
So it's about taking a step back, observing his behavior over time,
Exactly.
and seeing if his actions truly align with his words.
Yes.
It's about discerning whether he's just playing the game or if he's genuinely invested in building a lasting partnership.
And it's about trusting your own intuition.
Absolutely.
If something feels off,
Yeah.
if you're constantly questioning his motives or feeling insecure in the relationship,
Mm.
that's a sign to pay attention to.
Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into Steve Harvey's act. Like a lady, think like a man.
Has it really been that long?
I know, right? Time flies when you're having fun.
Or when you're dissecting relationship advice.
That's right. We've explored a wide range of topics, from understanding men's motivations and communication styles to navigating the complexities of love, commitment, and infidelity.
And we've encouraged you to think critically about Harvey's advice,
Right.
considering the cultural context,
Yeah.
potential biases, and whether it resonates with your own experiences.
Ultimately, relationships are a journey of self-discovery and learning.
They really are.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach, no magic formula for finding and keeping love.
Nope, it's all trial and error.
Exactly. But hopefully this deep dive has provided you with some valuable insights,
Yeah.
sparked some thought-provoking conversations, and empowered you to approach your own relationships with more awareness, intention, and confidence.
Absolutely. Or no communication, self-respect.
Right.
And a willingness to grow and learn together are essential ingredients for any successful partnership, regardless of gender.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we invite you to reflect on what resonated with you the most.
Yes, think about it.
What insights will you take with you?
Mhm.
And how will you apply them to your own life and relationships?